evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. We got an old but new familiar face. I'll get to them in a moment. Just to let you know, we air in prime time on Monday nights. And with that said, okay, let me talk about what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the game this week celebrating the Negro League out at Rickwood Field. We're going to talk about MLB as they've added the Negro League stats to the record book. So we're going to talk a little Aaron Boone, and I wonder why, because some guy to my right will definitely have an opinion on that. We're going to talk a little bit about MLB stolen base leaders, and of course we got to go with Mookie Betts. But that said, I'm setting the table there. Over to my right, his name is Eric Cat, Sports Team News. Eric's he come through my system. He's developed really nicely, and he says he's going to come out at least twice a month, hopefully more, but 2 is fine. Welcome back to the baseball show, Eric, for which you were a part of for a while. Glad to have you back.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me back.
You're welcome. Hey, folks, if you don't know much about Eric Katz, keep tuning into this show. This kid here is a heck of a writer, and you know what? I love his brash comments and his intelligence. If you can put brash and intelligent all in one word, you got yourself a great sports media individual, and that's what Eric has done, and I'm proud to have him back. Well, of course, I've only known George Eichhorn 40 plus years. Okay, welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Welcome to you too, Eric.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we got the barber, Mr. Meraday.
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Great to be here. Monday night, baseball's in full freaking force. Great things are happening. I'm watching a Pirate game while we're doing this tonight. My Buccos are up 4-1. They're making Ellie De La Cruz look like a fool out there. Did you guys know that he leads the National League in errors with 15 at shortstop? Yeah. Keep buying those Ellie De La Cruz cards, people.
Well, all right. Well, let's go to the chat room real quick, okay? Obviously, Smoking Jeremy V's in here, and he's a fixture on Fire Up on Thursday night. So with that said, we'll go to his first comment because we are going to talk about things for putting it out there, Jeremy. Share it to the rest of your cronies as well. But the Negro Leagues had a bunch of fantastic talent that never made it to the big show. Good point. So if you're going to sit there and put that comment out there, we got to validate it first before we do that, Jeremy, and the rest of our audience. The San Francisco Giants are taking the St. Louis Cardinals Thursday at Historic Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama. Unfortunately, 93-year-old Williemays won't be able to attend the game. He'll be home in San Francisco. Obviously at 93 years old, it's probably hard for Willie to get around a little bit. But the game is at 7:15 p.m. on Fox. And speaking of Birmingham, I have to put a shout out, okay, for me, that congratulations to the Birmingham Stallions and Skipholtz for winning the inaugural United Football League championship. And what's so significant about the Stallions' accomplishment is now they've won 3 in a row. 2 in the United States Football League, and now with UFL. With that said, we'll talk about the game first. Okay, Eric, some thoughts about what we're going to see on Thursday night at Rickwood Field.
I think it's great that Major League Baseball is putting a lot more recognition on the Negro Leagues. I think it's one of the forgotten leagues of players who, were really, by the time baseball integrated with Jackie Robinson, a lot of those players were just, unfortunately, just too old to make the jump. Like these guys were just, at the end of their careers, with the exception of guys like hankaaron and also the ageless satchelpage. I think it's great that we're actually putting a lot more recognition on it. That baseball is finally realizing the mistakes they're starting to acknowledge the mistakes they made a lot more now than ever. I mean, we commemorate Jackie Robinson Day, and obviously these days Roberto Clemente Day, but we never really, the sport as a whole never really, did more for the Negro Leagues. And I think baseball is doing a much better job now at recognizing that, these guys had some talent. Unfortunately, the wrongs of society and baseball as a whole prevented us from really seeing that talent. If you think back to, just how talented those players were, and if they were allowed to join a Major League Baseball team, the battles with Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio and more might have been much more legendary.
Good point. All right. Obviously, Jeremy Ballrick seems to be doing some research. So before I turn it over to George, I'll only put this one up there as well. He talks about Josh Bell for one, but we'll continue the list. Josh Gibson, Oscar Charleston, Buckleonard. Yeah, thanks for bringing that one up. I got a Buckleonard in there. Turkey's Deems, Monty Irving. I'm trying to go ahead and read it. Ray Dandridge and Ruby Foster in a few. Well done, Jeremy. And of course, the aforementioned Josh Cool Papa Bell. I think Buckleonard is the one that a lot of us really associate with because of what he's done. All right, George, continue from there. Let's talk about Thursday night. Thank you.
Well, it's not that the baseball hierarchy has not ignored these men. Far from it. Several of them were put into the Baseball Hall of Fame, albeit as a group in one setting many, many years ago. So let's be careful what we say here. Yes, they did not adopt all the records until the recent decision to do that.
Right.
But it's not a matter of them not being recognized, okay, because they are, as I said, many of them in the Hall of Fame. Turkey Stearns, who Kneecap Fighting mentioned in his comments, is a former Detroit Star. And that's the team name, not mine. I'm not calling him a superstar, but that's the team. It was called the Detroit Stars, and they played in a rickety stadium in Detroit. Unfortunately, the Detroit folks did not get enough money raised, and I wish they would have, to make that a sparkling new place to play. It's not out of the question yet, but have not been able to raise enough money. So I'm hoping that some of the big wealthy people in Michigan step forward and renovate that stadium where the Detroit Stars used to play here in Detroit. As far as the game goes, oh gosh, yeah, that's fantastic. I'm sorry about Willie Mays not being able to make it due to his health concerns and that, but hey, to say, hey kid, this was a walk back in time, going back to Rickwood, 10,800 seat stadium, something like 114 years old. And it's just unbelievable. I too would wish baseball would have done this a little bit sooner. That's okay. They're doing it now. They waited a long time, but then again, they waited a long time to go to places like the Little League Hall of Fame and obviously the College Baseball Hall of Fame. And of course, where Scott and Candy went, which is the Field of Dreams, and bring baseball there for sure. So it is a great thing. And I hope they can go back to Rickwood often. If they can't do it every year, but maybe every other year, rotate teams to go there would be wonderful. And I think that's one thing that, the commissioner gets credit for. I mean, he's been very conscious of that and bringing these historic, so deserving men, the black men that made this sport, helped make this sport what it was. Some of them made it to the AMLB, and as we know, many of them did not. But they certainly deserve all the acclaim and all the credit they get. The Negro League was an outstanding league, guys.
Okay, what do you think, Mark? I'm glad you brought your Field of Dreams up too, George. I was going to get to that.
Thank you.
Hey,
for sure.
Interesting you talk about Rickwood. One of my guys from the Original Sports Podcast with Mark Meriday and the Barbershop crew is actually down there. His great uncle is Pete Hill, who was in the MLB Hall of Fame. He was a Negro League player. And awesome. He gets him and his dad get to go to all the different events that they have. He was just up in Cooperstown for all the events up there, and he's down at Rickwood this week for everything. And I think it's a wonderful thing. One of the things I'm hoping it revitalizes in baseball, and I'm going to take a slightly different turn on this. I'm hoping it gets the young black kids interested in playing baseball again. Right. We've lost so much of the population of young black kids playing baseball, and it's unbelievable. Now, a lot of it's because, kids are pigeonholed to go down, stay with one sport year round, and you don't see as many kids playing multiple sports. But the other thing is, it's not an attractive sport to play anymore, which I'm hoping that these types of things enhance it and make it attractive to the younger generation. I'm very excited to hear what Rasheen has to say. Hopefully he can jump on the show tomorrow. From there, we're doing a Juneteenth show tomorrow. We're going to talk about a lot of those athletes, including some of the guys who played in the Negro Leagues. But he will definitely give us a little recap, whether he's on tomorrow or whether he's back on the show next week. But I think it's a wonderful thing. I agree. They need to do a game there every year, without question.
Well, Mark, feel free to let this guy know he's welcome on our show anytime you want as well. Okay, so I have no problem with it. I'm always looking for good outsiders to join the family, and that's what it is. But yeah, I think all of you guys are on point in your own way. Let's face the reality, Field of Dreams is going to be every year. They're obviously putting a lot of money into that, and who knows what kind of a stadium they're going to turn it into. And yeah, it was great being at the Field of Dreams, and I also know that Frank Thomas is behind a lot of that as well. I won't get into that too long because we have other topics to get to, but this is one game that, so Field of Dreams is going to be to me every year. This was just a good year for them while they're fixing it up to incorporate this, because what Major League Baseball is doing is you got the Little League World Series out in Williamsport. They're doing that game. So they're starting to get it right by having different types of things. So the Little League World Series, Field of Dreams, and now this. So I like the direction that they're going for sure. And I can only see that it will only go upwards. Let's go on to the next topic unless Eric wants to add to it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, though, I mean, the Field of Dreams field, I mean, they're still going to keep the movie field, but they're going to have that one next to it where they're going to play the game. It's going to be more than just the annual Field of Dreams game at that stadium, which I'm hoping that they have a power hitting team so we can see fly balls going to the corn, unlike the last Field of Dreams game. But I think, they're going to have, I think Dyersville itself is going to sink a bunch of money into it, with having tournaments there and all those sorts of stuff. I think the city is going to make a killing off of it.
Well, let me tell you, I went to that Field of Dreams, and I had Candy Ebling, our producer and photographer, for the trip. And, I crashed out of those things with a little mini video and was able to do 2 or 3 shows from there, made it worth my while. So I know y'all would have to go back into the archives on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. But let me tell you something, subscribe to it. I have some really good content there. And ironically, I did it, I believe, in October when the World Series was going on and they were about to shut it down. So I enjoyed crashing out of the corn. And I didn't have much caffeine, folks. Let me tell you, I did not have much. If I'd had a ton of caffeine, who knows if there would be any corn left. I would have done it anyway. But no, it was something really, really, really neat. Hello, Ralph. So, we're going to put Katie on for station break, and then we're going to continue to roll through. For those of you just joining us, it's 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, and your crew tonight, myself, Eric Katz, George Eichhorn, Mark Merday, and those that are participating in the chat room so thus far, Kneecap Fighting with Motor City Alliance, AB, also known as Jeremy Ballrick, and Ralph Williams is kind enough to slip in here as well. Go ahead, Candy.
Tonight's show is brought to you by the South Florida Tribune Publishing Company, which published its first book last year in November, written by none other than Scott the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders, and George Eichhorn wrote the foreword for it. It is an awesome book. It has a couple of pictures. If you want to see a young Scott, get the picture, get the book. But also just read. He's got some awesome stories. He loves to share his tales of being in the media for over 40 plus years. You got to read it. Even if you don't want to get into the media, it's a great book. Some of the people that he has interviewed, you got to get the book to find out all of the different people. But we also have a website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can see all kinds of content. Scott writes, George writes, and I actually take pictures, believe it or not. Go check it out on the website. If you have, and we actually have a sports apparel store for South Florida Tribune on our website. So go get yourself a hoodie or a baseball cap for South Florida Tribune. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find this podcast wherever you get your podcast. We also talk football on Tuesday nights, sports exchanges on Wednesday nights. All of the sports are covered there. Anything from cornhole to hockey to baseball to football, you name it, it's on there. The same with Thursday night. We have a show called Fire Up. We also Scott does a special show called the Motor City Madmouth Show on No Filter. It's a one-on-one interview show. You gotta go see it. NoFilter.net. Back to you, Scott.
All right, Candy, well done. Also, if you want to find us on Twitter /@Tribune South. And here we have a nice comment from Kate Aitchison. Let me give you a little information about Kate. Here's a young lady that I found me through the National Sports Media Association, and actually through Spencer Tomsat, who was her professor at the University of Alabama. She reached out to me looking for help. And I'm going to tell you, this young lady, I've been working with her for the last couple of months right now. The future is bright for Kate. She's an exceptional writer. I'm going to bring her on the air gradually, but I'll tell you what, get used to the name Kate Aitchison. This young lady here, to me, is what I consider my diamond in the rough, and I expect when I get done with her, she's going to do a lot of great things. So, Kate, thanks a lot for being in. She writes awesome book full of great information and stories. You know, I think what's neat about being in this industry is when I have a guy like Eric, okay, he's fresh, raw, and all that, and then you have somebody like Kate who just recently came on board. I'll see her next week, and the list goes on and on. This is what it's all about. You know, we talk about the future of this business. We need the future of this business, okay, to be filled with young, aspiring, intelligent talent. And again, I know what I'm looking for. And yes, thanks for the shout out, Scott. I'm amazed to be working with you. Goes both ways, Kate. But the reality is the future is what we're looking at. Okay. A lot of us older guys are getting tired and retired. And my passion will burn inside of me for as long as I can. But people like Eric and Kate are what the future holds. And I do want to mention one other thing before I go on to my next topic. We had Deb Whitcast on last week on the Motor City Mad Mouse show, and she talked about women in sports. So, you know, Deb is somebody that I really enjoy working with as well, and she'll be involved with more projects than she wants to do it. But, you know, this is what it's all about, you know, and I thank Deb for being on last week's Motor City Mad Mouse show. So, Kate, keep it up. Keep coming into these chats. This is part of your training right now, so you learn that by the time you get on here, I'm going to make sure that you're ready and that there's no such thing as nerves when you get on. That's why I'm taking Kate, Mark, and George, and Eric very slowly, because I want to make sure that when I hit the jackpot, I do it once without anybody being overly nervous. She won't. She's a calm kid, but once you get on the air, as we all know, it's a different animal. So, all right, with that said, next topic. MLB, speaking of which George alluded to it, okay, MLB does add the Negro League stats, stirs up the record books. Well, you know what, George, since you started it, now you can talk more about it. Obviously, the Hall of Fame has indicated they're not changing plaques or anything like that, but the stats are what they are. You can put them on the computer, wherever you're going to put them on now. What are your thoughts about them finally being integrated with the regular stats? And some guys will be pushed down the order, but this looks like one that's a bit overdue anyways.
Yeah, it's taken a while. Obviously, it took a long time for them to study this whole topic, this whole issue. There are obviously some old-time baseball folks that aren't happy about it. Too bad. You know, we're looking to the future, like you guys talked a little bit earlier. Mark had mentioned it about attracting an audience that includes Black young boys. We need to develop the game of baseball more. We need to get more interest. The kids don't have to play just football and just soccer and basketball in the city or inner city. I mean, you know, come on, baseball has been at the heart of America for so many years. So, I mean, I look for signs, I look for positive things to come out of this, because it's a whole recognition not only of the Negro Leagues, but the great, great athletes that they were, the great stories they had to tell, and obviously the great numbers they had. And of course, like I said, you know, you're going to have some purists that are going to say, wait a minute, they didn't play at Yankee Stadium. They didn't play at Dodgers. They didn't play at Briggs Stadium or wherever in Detroit. But I'm sorry, you know, their stadiums were built and their dimensions were accepted in the Negro League. And that's, you know, those statistics are what they are. So, you know, yeah, you're not going to have a perfect, I'm not trying to say stadiums are all alike. They're not anyways, but some people might look at some of the dimensions of those parks. But no, to summarize my feelings, Scott and crew, I think it was time for this to happen. I welcome it and I encourage it. And no, I don't expect them to redo all the plaques and the verbiage, if you will, for Ty Cobb versus, you know, Cool Papa Bell or whatever. I mean, you know, the comparisons are there, but they're not going to go and redo all the plaques. I don't expect that to happen, but it's a good move, Scott. A good move.
Yeah, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when, okay? And as far as dimensions of parks, let's talk about some of the old-time stadium. I'm not mentioning any by names, but where the parks dimensions back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s until they finally fine-tune them. So whatever the parks were at that time legitimizes stats. I don't care what anybody says. They are what they are. And covering minor league baseball, like I've done for a while, especially in the Florida State League, you know what? When now it's low A, but when it was high A, you know, the people have to understand that these kids' stats are not, were, to me, definitely good because they were playing in major league parks. If you hit a home run in a Florida State League ballpark, that was a legitimate home run anyway, because that's a throw or the MLB is playing. But the point is, you're right. They're not going to mess around with stadiums. They were accredited stadiums at the time, and that's why I think this move is long overdue. All right, to the man on my left, Mark, go ahead. Pick up on
that. I don't. Yeah, I understand the stadium thing, but I think we're looking at the level of talent more than anything else. We're not talking about specifically home runs. We're not talking about specifically larger dimensions of a stadium. We're talking about the level of talent. And I think if you were able to match up a Negro League All-Star team against a regular Major League Baseball All-Star team, I think you would be surprised at the results, to be quite honest with you. I think you would see I just think it would be a different outcome than what most people would anticipate. I think putting these guys' records into play is probably the most honorable thing that they could do in Major League Baseball. I'm not sure who decided to do that, but my hat goes off to them. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, they were still playing the same game. And that's what it's all about. And they were considered professional athletes back then. So, you know, I mean, I don't even know why we would even question that. Even the baseball purists need to have a reality check. I know a lot of things are constantly changing and they're taking records away, putting records back in, you know, all that stuff. But from this perspective, this is something that should have been done a long time ago, fellas, a long time ago.
Hey, Mark, you know, unless my new glasses have really gone south pretty quick, okay, I have to preface what I'm seeing out of these clear glasses, okay? It's hard for your hat to go off when you don't have one on. So right. we might have to have fun and say maybe your headsets go off. I'm just kidding with you.
That's why I stopped myself. I'm like, I'm not wearing that right now.
That's okay. Come on, Mark. You know, it's all a good fun.
Absolutely.
Anyway, but hey, this subject, you can have fun, but it's one that had to be done. All right, Eric.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a perfect solution? No. Does it completely solve the issue? No. And, you know, I'm not sure, you know, obviously people have been trying for years to figure out what is the perfect solution. I mean, there are a lot of people paid to figure that out. But it was something that I think that should have been done, to be truthful, Jackie Robinson's number being retired at the latest.
Right.
But, you know, but here we are. I think that the game is very rich in history. As a matter of fact, every single ballpark you will ever go to is different dimensions. Some stadiums like Yankee Stadium have a short porch. There are other stadiums where you really like AT&T Park, for example, or whatever the Giants call their stadium these days, where you really have to give that ball a whack in order for it to leave the ballpark. But, you know, at the end of the day, every stadium's different. It shouldn't matter that it wasn't a major league ballpark. It's still the same game. You know, the box score is, you know, it's democratic. You know, it figured out, you know, it tells you what kind of ball player you were that day, whether you went 5 for 5 or 0 for 5. It doesn't matter. The box score is still the same. That's one thing that you'll never be able to take away from the game is the box score being democratic. You know, it's, you know, to me, it was long overdue that we recognize the players that unfortunately due to mistakes of society and baseball in general, that they never got their due. Actually, it arguably killed Josh Gibson. But it's nice that baseball has finally put them in there. I mean, will it be? Is it a perfect solution? No, but it's a step in the right direction. I think baseball will continue to make those steps. And as much garbage as I've given Rob Manfred over the years, and as much criticism as I've given unfiltered criticism I've given him, Scott knows. I have to give my hats off to him, and I think this will be a huge part of his legacy in
Absolutely
making sure that the Negro Leagues finally got their due.
Yeah, one thing I have to add to my bug list now that you guys have brought it up is I need to get to the Negro Leagues Museum in Kansas City, and I'd like to study the history of it that way. All right, well, let's go back to Kate. George, you're going to read this one because this is an incredible comment from somebody like her. Go ahead.
I think especially considering the always improving training equipment and techniques, any pro from back in the day would compare to athletes today under the same circumstances. The field difference is the same concept. Boy, spot on, Kate.
I'm telling you.
Awesome, man. Scott, she good thought.
One thing about Kate, and why am I bragging about her? I should. I mean, she's come a long way in 2 months. When I get done with her, who knows what's going to happen to her? But she's an incredible writer, and she thinks every word and sentence out to the punctuation mark to make her point. She's not she's one of those individuals, just think it through, put it out there, and you know what, Kate, that's the bullseye. Mark or Eric, do you want to add to what Kate just put out there?
I mean, it's true. I mean, back in the day, these guys had probably the worst conditions on the road. I'm talking, nowadays it would make the Players Association pass out right on the spot.
Right.
But, nowadays, training is only getting better. You have these academies, not just overseas, but here in the States, that are dedicated to even certain positions, hitting, fielding, things like that. And, now it's baseball is always going to evolve. Like society, it's always constantly evolving. Sometimes for worse, like the runner on second rule, for example, but sometimes for better, which it took me a little while to come around to this, but the pitch clock, where it makes it a lot easier to go to a game on a Monday night, unlike back in the day where you might not get out of the park till 2:00 in the morning. But baseball, I mean, as we make the point about the purist having a problem with the Negro League stats being added to the stats of players back in the day. Well, to be truthful, like I said, it goes back to baseball will always be evolving. Rule changes are going to happen. There are things that you'll like being added to the game, and there will be other things that you don't like being added to the game. To be truthful, I think that people not liking the Negro, although it's not a perfect solution, it's a step in the right direction.
Right.
I think that the Negro League stats, I mean, if you're saying that they shouldn't be in the same ballpark, well, I'm starting to believe that they also might be part of the problem as well that baseball had for a long time.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Anybody else want to conclude on that thought? I mean, all of you guys have done a good job.
I don't have anything more to add.
Yeah, Kate set the table well for us. So, the bottom line is I'm really happy that the stats have obviously are in the record books as they rightfully be. And the main thing that we have to not lose sight of here is the fact that, to me, you want to make sure that you give history, okay, it's due, that everything that's connected with the history of the sport should be in there, and that's it. This move is a good move. All right, so now let's go to Kate again. Are there any rule changes in baseball from many years ago that you still strongly dislike, or do you think time and getting used to it makes most rule changes feel like evolution banner? Boy, you know what,
Well,
Kate? That's a loaded question.
I think, Scott, we should probably hang on to that for a future episode.
Not really. No, I think when she can bring it up again. I want to address Kate's question. Number one, I still hate the ghost runner. I really don't. The mound visit, to me, nobody really cares. I think the one thing, Kate, that I really like is I do like the 3-batter minimum. At least I have no problem with that. We're used to seeing 2-3 relievers go 2-3 innings, let alone 3 batters. And as far as the pitch clock, well, let's face it. Eric mentioned it in terms of the usefulness in terms of cutting down games. But you know what? To me, what rule changes in the past? Well, and we'll address it later. But I want to make sure Kate gets the right answer. In the past, you know what? I still don't like the designated hitter. I've always been a firm believer that the pitcher should hit and go 8, and that takes away strategy. So, Kate, I hope that answers your question. But they have the DH. What are you going to do? You guys want to go ahead and add to that?
Well, yeah, I do want to add just one small thought that even though guys are aligned as they come through the ages with the guys that were there previously, the game has advanced in terms of size, strength, and ability. You know, we can't overlook that aspect of it. You've got guys that are hitting the ball a ton. The technological aspect of it, the health aspect of it, you know, you don't have guys eating hot dogs and smoking cigars and then running to the ballpark a few hours later, if you get my drift. But I mean, I understand what Kate's trying to say, you know, from her aspect of it. Absolutely. It's more the fact that if these guys had the same tools today that they have, the guys from back in the day, can you imagine how spectacular they would be? And I, you know, I would love to see that. Like, I would just love to be able to reincarnate that type of mentality and see that in action.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, you know, we'll bring it up at a later date, but I felt like you deserved an answer tonight. And the only thing that could come out of my mind was, I don't like the designated hitter. I mean, and now with me working with the Marlins, you know, I got used to the pitcher hitting for a while until they made it universal. So, yeah, but we will. But that's a great question, Kate. And this is part of what she, you know, what any baseball fan, let alone a newcomer to the sports media, will be able to fire off these really good questions. Eric, anything you want to add to this too before we move on to the next topic?
I despise the runner on second rule. I think it's the dumbest rule ever put into baseball. I thought, you know, the pandemic at the time I understood because, you know, you didn't want him to stay out there because obviously we didn't know what we know now about the pandemic, thinking any time exposed, which I get it back then, but I don't like how it's become a permanent part of the game. I mean, I think once, Scott, I went on a 30-second rant about it on a show. I think that one rule, I don't like how it's not really a rule, but it's kind of the way the front office is doing things. I don't like how they've taken out batting averages, which, to be truthful, a guy hitting .315 and winning the title is just ludicrous to me. I don't like how analytics have kind of, you know, a lot of the analytics, not all of them, you know, some of them are useful, but a lot of them are kind of dictating the way, you know, dictating the way the game is played, and managers don't really manage anymore. So that's one thing I don't like about it. And I don't like the mound visit limit because, to be truthful, I don't want my pitcher going out there getting hung out to dry while everyone else is teeing off on him. Because then, how's he going to get right the next day when I need him?
Right. Good points all the way around. Okay.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't. Yeah, I'm in favor of the DH. I'll just go down the list. Yes, I always love the DH. I know you don't. Runner at second at 10th inning. No, get rid of that crappy rule. Mound visits, no, I'm in favor of that. There's too many guys, too many pitching coaches. They screw around. They give the bullpen more time to warm up down there. I see right through that what their little tricks are. And the pitch count, I'm sorry, the shift, I hated the shift. I don't like it, so I'm glad they banned a lot of that. So some of the rule changes I do like, and especially the National League going to the DH. It's over. Oh my God, it was just overdue.
I'm glad that they got rid of that other shift. That was an absolute joke. It really, really was. So awful. I'm glad you brought it up. See, a little question like this, and what does it bring? An awful lot of baseball. There you go.
Yep.
All right. Well, this one's definitely up Eric's alley. Aaron Boone pauses an argument, with an ump for God Bless America. Oh my goodness, Eric. What are your thoughts about Mr. Boone, pausing an argument, which he's known to get thrown out of a lot of games, and he certainly makes it pretty entertaining out there to do this?
Well, it's not the first time a manager has done that. Jim Leland did that years ago. He paused an argument with an umpire for I think it was God Bless America, but I know he paused the argument. I think it's respectful, drop what you're doing, honor the country. Who knows? Maybe it helped Booney cool off there. Booney is is not known for keeping his mouth shut in front of umpires.
You think?
I mean, Girardi was pretty entertaining too when he was back in the day.
Yeah, but let's face it, Eric. Come on, Eric. You're a little too soft on this one. I expected more brashness on you. So let me help you a little bit. Let me help you. I know you're a Yankee guy. I get it. But Aaron Boone, let's face it, he's climbing up the ladder for ejections. But I got to tell you, I give him his prompts for at least putting it aside. Aaron Boone's going to get more publicity in the modern era like what we have now because we don't have the ability to go back. And most of this generation doesn't remember the Earl Weavers, the Bobby Coxes, the Billy Martins. They just simply don't do it. Well, you do. Well, you're different. You're a different bird altogether.
I remember Bobby was managed to bring.
Yeah, no, Eric, wait. Folks, there's two different kinds of people. You have young guys that don't know as much, and then Eric, who he talk about 20s and 30s baseball. He's only a kid, so I don't even tell you to go there. You know, they'll get to know you as time goes on. But all seriously speaking here, you know, Aaron Boone to me, pausing a national anthem, he's starting to mature as a manager too. I think he is. And he's got the one thing Aaron Boone has to understand is, yeah, you can get thrown out to motivate your team here and there, but they still need you on the field for 9 innings as much as you can do it. And he's lucky that he got Hal Steinbrenner as his boss instead of George Steinbrenner. Who knows what would have happened there? And that would have been a bigger circus. So, you know what? All fairness aside, I respect Boone for actually pausing an argument with an ump for God Bless America. And I still wish him well. I hope that he's able to win a championship at some point with the Yankees. And I'll tell you, I have a good history with the Yankees too. I grew up in their system as a writer covering the Fort Lauderdale Yankees. So Aaron Boone was under an extraordinary amount of heat last year because they were really not a contender as much. Now their team is playing much better. But you know what? More power to you, Booney. All right, go ahead, George.
Yeah, no, I don't see anything wrong with pausing the argument. It is kind of a respect for the nation, respect for our flag, respect for our country, of course, for them to do so. But he was involved in another bizarre incident with Hunter Wendelstedt. Remember back in April when he wrongfully ejected Aaron Boone, and that whole situation was ridiculous. That the way that was handled by a veteran umpire. But on this one, Scott, no, I agree. Pause the argument. Yeah, if you still got words to say, pick it up after the lady or the man is done singing the God Bless America and continue on. But no, there's, he's been at umpires' throats for a long time, as we know, just like Jim Leland was. And of course, the famous Earl Weaver. My God, you talk about a guy, and Billy Martin that went after umpires. But all kidding aside, no, I think it's kind of interesting, a little bit humorous, but they were both being respectful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The one thing we can't forget about Boone, though, a lot of this is his reputation too. If you come across in a situation, it's your reputation, you're getting thrown out every other day, like obviously seems to be the case, then obviously people are going to go out there and look at you in a certain way. Now, for example, and I'll turn over to Mark in a moment. So you got Rasheed Wallace and Draymond Green, who are obviously known for being technical foul addicts. Then that's going to happen, and it's going to be one of those things. And I think they have Aaron Boone, who's carved up a reputation for being a hothead, and he's going to get thrown out a lot. But you know what the other three have in common? Rasheed Wallace, Draymond Green, and Aaron Boone, they're all winners, and they win games. Can't knock that. All right, turn over to Mark.
I don't even know how to respond to this, fellas. I mean, I'm so disconnected when I watch a sporting event. I watch it for the event in and of itself. You got to do what you got to do sometimes, and it baffles me when I see people put themselves in a situation. They know that they're wrong about doing it, but let's face it, he's a Yankee manager, and like you said, you go the whole way back to Billy Martin. Billy Martin was always on a rampage. Girardi and Joe Torre were a little bit different, but essentially Yankee managers have they either have to be on one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum to be a manager of the Yankees. They either got to show an exorbitant amount of fire in their butt, or they got to just be laid back and chill. And, we know what we get with Aaron Boone. And I mean, it doesn't shock me, and we'll just leave it right there.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. Now we're going to go two more topics to get to. We're going to talk about Major League stolen base leaders by teams. Okay. Cincinnati Reds are ahead. 1-0 with 103. Milwaukee Brewers at 102. Washington Nationals at 101. Philadelphia 77. Of course, we all know that they hit home runs. Boston was 69 and Kansas City was 68. Now, of those six, the National League has the top four. Why is that? Okay, I'm going to lead it off with you, Mark.
Catchers suck.
Okay.
I watch a lot of baseball anymore. Part of the reason I watch a lot of baseball, going back to the rules that you guys talked about, is it's sped up. It's sped up. The Ghost Runner keeps the game moving. I know it's not the funnest thing to watch, but It keeps the game moving. It gets an ending to it. All that stuff speeds it up. So I watch a lot more baseball, but I don't think the catchers are very good anymore. I mean, you just don't have those guys behind the plate. That, in the fact that you can only make one throw over to first base. Am I correct? You got one throw over.
Actually, two.
It's two?
Two. And yeah, you can go two, but then the third time around, you could throw it. You can go a third time, but if you don't get them, it's a balk.
Yeah. Really? So, think about it. If you go over one or two times, if you force that throw, guess what happens? Then he knows he's not going to come over to me. If I'm safe, I get to move up anyway. These guys are taking advantage of that from that perspective as well. Your pitchers are bigger. It's a longer stride to home plate. I mean, there's a bunch of factors that come into play there. And, again, the speed of the game today with guys that are on base, they're fast. They're much faster as teams than they are as individuals, like we used to watch with guys like loubrock and Sweet Lou Whitaker and guys like that used to steal a lot of bases.
Ricky.
They were just individuals. Now we see team speed that's phenomenal.
Interesting. Well, and I should also point out one other thing. The catchers can throw back to first as many times as they want. It's just they put the limitation on it. Okay, Eric, go ahead.
I think number one, the American League. It's built that league has always been built to bash. I mean, the National League has power too with teams like the Phillies, but mostly you're going to find a lot more power in the American League. I mean, especially historically. I think number one, the bases are bigger. So it makes it so you take out, that they take out inches down. That takes out a few inches down the line. That's that much of a shorter distance to a second base and third base. So it makes it a lot easier to steal. Number two, catchers really, to me, they're just kind of out there to steal strikes nowadays. And they, they've kind of gone overboard with it, especially what happened with Yadier Molina's wrist. When the bat absolutely slugged him, obviously not on purpose, but still he was trying to steal a strike and he paid for it. And I think number two, they just don't, the mechanics are just different now. They're not trying to nab runners really anymore. I mean, if you get them, great, but there's not really any great fielding catchers really anymore. They mostly just try and steal strikes, whatever, not really focus on receiving or anything. What they teach kids now is completely screwed up with at all positions, not just catcher. And then also just some teams have faster guys than others. The Brewers, you got Bryce Turang who can nab some bags, who's very fast. And, some teams just, a lot of teams now, especially the smaller market teams, get those speed guys because they know they're not going to be able to afford those big hulking power hitter guys that you could pay 200 to 300 plus million a year. So they have to find other ways to win in the stolen, and they've taken advantage with the stolen base.
Point. Sorry, George.
Yeah, good point, Eric, about the home run and the slugging in the American League. Yeah, out of the top 10 teams in baseball, only 3 from the National League are the top 10 in home runs. All the other ones are from the American League. And then conversely, like Scott mentioned, the stolen base leaders, the Reds, the Brewers, the Nationals, the Phillies. You got to go all the way to slot number 5 and number 6 for Red Sox, Royals, and then 7, of course, the Rays. So yeah, some of it goes back to how these leagues were formed, and we all knew that National League played small ball more and that sort of thing, and specialized in their running attack, the running game, if you will. But you had a Ricky Henderson too on Oakland, you know, and other teams had star base stealers. But I think I echo what you guys say. All the reasons you talk about, the catching isn't that good in the ranks anymore, and the points that you brought up, Eric, about and Scott too, about the number of tosses to first base is limited, and some of the strides of the pitchings. Very, very good points you all made. I'm not going to argue with any of them. I mean, I think it's a combination of things, guys, that we see this happening with. But you know, the team here local to me, oh my God, I hate to even mention them. They are at second to last in steals with 31 stolen bases, the Detroit Tigers. But guess who's they're tied with? The Atlanta Braves of all teams. So even they don't have any speed in Atlanta.
Well, they lost Ronald Acuna Jr., so that also reminds me a lot of speed.
Of course, yeah.
Well, bear in mind, though, when they built Comerica Park, they, scared Juan Gonzalez out of there. He thought he could hit home runs. He couldn't hit them there. And he didn't want to.
Yeah.
Mike Gill was going to pay a boatload of money, but he didn't want it. But nevertheless, some ballparks are pitcher-friendly ballparks. Now, Juan Gonzalez played at Tiger Stadium. I guarantee would have stayed there a whole lot longer, but that's for another time of the day. But, yeah, I mean, obviously, Eric mentioned some good points. They have bigger bases. I don't know how much that really makes a lot. But the limitations to being able to go out there and throw to first base, I will tell you this, okay, the best pitching move I have ever seen in my life to first base is former Tigers pitching coach Chuck Hernandez, who was with me for the Fort Lauderdale Yankees. Chuck once told me, though, that I said, yeah, it had to be a good move because I couldn't get anybody out, but that's for another day. But and Chuck and I are good friends too. So I mean, I always baseball is a small world, is really what it is when you think about it. Unlike other sports, you see your old buddies years later, they never forget who you are. Mark, is there anything you wanted to add to it?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to add to what Eric said. When you see a guy like Austin Hedges hanging around the big leagues, he hits like $165. Mm-hmm. It's not because he has a great arm. It's because he can frame the ball really, really well. He went from Pittsburgh to Texas last year, won a World Series because he can frame the ball.
Don't get me started there, Merida, because you know what? I caught, and I used to frame the ball more. I got nailed for more catcher's interferences than anybody. I used to talk to the umpires, get in their ears. I used to mess around with the hitter, and then I took my fair share of mound. I did everything that baseball was trying to go out there and get rid of it. I was guilty of it in the Little League, and where do most of my interviews come for at the ballpark? As many as I could get with catchers. So don't even open that can of worms because I'm with you. Framing the ball is something I loved, and I got to deal with catchers' interferences with a much smaller wrist than I did then, and didn't even care. Go ahead,
Scott. Since catchers interferences is a much larger problem now in baseball, where it's become a lot more common. You were doing it before it was cool.
Well, that's true. I'm a little leaguer, man. I got nailed for all of them, and I don't mind telling a national audience that either. I really don't. I was guilty, and I don't care.
How many times did they try and take you out on the throw?
So, Kate, that's another story behind the scenes. I'm curious. So, Kate, I'm curious, which of you played baseball and what position? Well, Kate, you already heard my answer. When I was good, okay, I really loved catcher. It kept me in the game. My concentration span of the other positions weren't good. And I was playing third base. You could call me the wild thing. My balls were sailing everywhere. And unless they had a tall first baseman, those things were going airborne. But I love catching anyways. It kept me in the game. And, you're always busy. Catcher sees more of the field than anybody. The pitcher just sees what got there. Catcher sees it, and that's why they make good managers. All right, George, did you ever play baseball at all?
No organized baseball. I mean, pickup, I would just be an outfielder and pickup.
All right, there you go, Kate. George's answer was easy. Okay. All right, what about you, Mark?
Yeah, I played catcher for 12 years.
Wow.
12 years of baseball. Yep. I stopped playing once I got, through high school. I stopped. Then And I did track and field a couple years in high school instead. And football is what took me to the next dimension.
Yeah. See, I played basketball 1 year, played a year of hockey, and most of my time was with baseball. And let me tell you, I can't tell you how many times I got hit in the head with bats. I don't know if I had concussion issues then. I know I have them now. But I remember getting hit where the sun doesn't shine a lot of times. And my dad owns a sporting goods store, so he knew that was an area he had to bring a few of those home because he knew I was taking a beating back there. That's why when I hear a guy like Alex Avila having to get out and the beating he took, I certainly was sympathetic. What about you, Eric?
I played I played right field, I played second base, and I played third base. So I was all over.
Yep.
There you go. You'd be more valuable than I would have. Well, you know, I mean, I wasn't a very good offensive player either, but then again, a lot of times catchers generally aren't great offensive players. Some of them are good.
I could steal. That was where I could steal. That's where my value was.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, if you're as skinny back then as you are now, then I can see how you get out really quickly. Good stuff. All right.
And back in the day, you could also take out the catcher, which was my job.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's another thing where I understand the collisions that they've had to reduce those to, but we're not going to get into that today. All right, final topic of the night: Mookie Betts is out 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured left hand. Doesn't need surgery per Dave Roberts' manager. Eric, how badly are the Dodgers going to be affected? That Mookie's going to be sitting out for a little while. Certainly not going to be in the All-Star game.
That's a once in a generation player. There's no replacing him. He's literally can play all over. He's a Gold Glove outfielder. He's proven he can play short. He's proven he can play shortstop. He even played it on the fly last year, coming back from somewhere. And you know he could obviously hit the ball. He's a two-time MVP. I mean, that's your heart and soul right there. I mean, there's no way you're going to replace that. I think it's going to hurt the Dodgers a lot more than they realize. Yeah, they have a nice lineup, but the top of their lineup is where the production's coming from. The bottom of the lineup, there's none to be found.
Right.
So they're going to be. They might hit some bumps along the way.
Okay. What do you think, George?
Well, you still got guys like Ohtani and Hernandez and Friedman and Will Smith. Yeah, but I agree. I mean, you know, you're taking 86 hits out of the lineup, 16 doubles, 10 homers, 40 RBIs. I mean, the guy, he's a great ball player. He really is. And it is tough. It's very tough. 9 steals, and he hits for average with 304. OBP is 405. So I agree. I mean, Eric's right. I mean, you know, that is going to take a lot out. Now, that being said, they have a lot of other talented players on that team and in that lineup. 6 to 8 weeks is still a long time. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's happened before where guys get injured on you know, teams that go to the World Series. But, heck, the Dodgers, they've been failing the last how many years? They still haven't got another World Series under their belt. So they obviously want to win one this year, and they spent the boatload of money, obviously. So, yeah, it's going to be a temporary thing, but I'm sure they'll bounce back if indeed he comes back healthy, which I hope he does.
Well, it'll be the end of summer. The Dodgers' only World Series came during the COVID-19 year, but
yep.
But you know what? You get a championship ring. I don't care what it does.
Right.
And Clayton Kershaw gets a monkey off his back. Dave Roberts gets a monkey off his back. You know. But that's beside the point. They earned it during a tough year. So let's go back to Kate again. You know, I don't know about you guys. Let's see if we can agree on this. Okay. Here's the thing. But do you guys agree that Kate is our unofficially on the crew, that she's part of the crew tonight?
Absolutely. 100%.
So we got 5 people on the show. I'm sorry, Eric.
I'm loading up. I better put some more ammo in the battleship.
Yeah, well, you might want to follow her on Twitter too. Kate, why don't you put your Twitter information for those of you that are watching? So yeah, no, she's done an incredible job with some of the questions. So we'll see. So
and Kate, you know, just to say this, Kate, yeah, with Scott and me, and especially the barber and Eric, of course, a wealth of knowledge. You're going to hear some old players, glory days, great teams, great stadiums, because we grew up with all that. We followed all of that. So I appreciate your comment, though, that you love to hear that as being a younger fan that you are, younger writer that you are.
Yeah, I'll put her last comment out. Kate, why don't you put your Twitter information as well, so that people can start following you on there. This young, I got news for you. She never said she knew much about baseball, but I guess she knows more than anybody thinks, because common sense comes into play here. But yeah, put your Twitter info. And with that said, okay, who's next on this topic? I think Eric, you already talked about it, right?
Yeah, Mookie Betts.
Okay, go ahead.
Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always me. I'm last. It's okay. You save the best for last every hit here. It's all right.
Doesn't matter. You think, you know what? I learned all this rotating back and forth from Candy Ebling. Now I like to just mix it around. And I'll tell you one thing about Candy, though. When she goes on Fire Up, she got this segment there called My Town. And I'll tell you, this is an incredible segment. Here you go.
Okay, so here's my take on it. If these guys can continue to hang around at the top of their division, they don't need to go out and make a trade, because they're going to get Mookie Betts back around trade deadline time.
Right.
They don't have to go out and spend any money. So, at the end of the day, you're going to get a fresh guy back in terms of him not playing every night and things of that nature. He's probably not going to have to travel with the team because he's injured. You're going to get a pretty fresh guy, and you're going to get a great all-star back. I know you don't want that. I know you don't want him to be injured. But if you look at the positive aspect of it, you can spin this pretty well. And you know what, guys, I'm pretty sure they have a few guys down in the minors that can come up and maybe not be Mookie, but that can take some of the brunt of that and play.
Okay. Eric, all right. First of all, before I turn over to Eric, just let's put Kate's information up, Candy, on the screen. To follow her on Twitter X, it is HSN AITCHISON 56734. So, for those of you that are on the audio side, you can get it. I'll say it again, AITCHISON 56734. And she also has an Instagram account, which is really one of her better social medias. It's called @Kate.H. This is where she's more active. So there you go. Go, please follow her. And I got news for you. Don't be surprised if she finds herself on this show at the rate she's going. I just didn't. She threw a curveball and knew more about baseball than I even anticipated. So, all right. So, Mark, anybody else left on this whole thing? Kate, I love it when you incorporate that way. My brain runs amok. Okay. So, talking about bets. Did you talk about it, George?
Yeah, Eric's got one more comment.
All right. Go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, though, I mean, it's the Dodgers kind of have the best of both worlds, endless amounts of money, and also a very deep minor league system, because Andrew Friedman, he originally was running the Rays, obviously early on when they were starting to become what they eventually became. And he knows what he's doing. He knows how to spend when he needs to spend, obviously with the endless amount of money there, but he also knows how to be disciplined. He let a bunch of players go just so he could run after Ohtani, so the Dodgers wouldn't get hammered by the luxury tax. So he knows what to do. The Dodgers have a very deep system over there. So I still think they're going to make a move at the deadline, because they could use a little more production at the bottom of the lineup, especially in the outfield, which I still think a move will happen, not to temporarily replace Betts, who will be back at some point. I mean, they have Gavin Lux, who's right now at second base, but yeah, he's struggling in spring training, but he's still naturally a shortstop. So they have options over there of people they can plug and play until Mookie Betts gets back.
Well, you guys did a good job. Yeah, as far as Mookie Betts, Eric, you mentioned this, and I think it's a good point. When you have a lot of money like the Dodgers, you're in a position to get whoever you want. You really can. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, baseball doesn't have a salary cap. Okay, they have a luxury tax, but it's a luxury tax on what you want to pay later. And we know that the Dodgers aren't bashful about paying it. Right now, what they need is a world championship in the worst way during a full season, not an abbreviated year. Again, that doesn't take away from what they've done, but it's like Mike Ilitch once would doom the Detroit. Now I'm making the Detroit reference, but the only thing is, George, you are not allowed to comment when I make the Detroit reference because you do too many of them. But Mike Ilitch, when he did have a salary cap, could get any player he wanted. As a result, Stanley Cup champions. They had 4 during his era. Same thing with the Dodgers. Go, whatever you need, you'll get it. And I'll go along with Mark. Okay, they're going to get Betts back with about a month or two off, anyways, where he's a little bit more fresh anyhow, and he won't have to go through the 162, and he'll be able to come back. And let's face reality, they're sitting pretty well in their division, anyways, the NL West.
They can cruise. I mean, no one aside from the Dodgers, they practically dominate that. They're dominating that division, so they can just sit back and relax for a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let everybody take a parting shot. Eric, give me a quick parting shot tonight.
I think the Dodgers, regarding Mookie Betts, they're going to be fine. They're going to be just fine. They got a deep minor league system. You got players. You got Gavin Lux, who can also play shortstop a bit. He struggled in spring training, but they got guys that can plug in and play over there. Andrew Friedman knows what he's doing. And, the Dodgers are going to be just fine. Besides, no one else in the NL West is very good this year anyway, aside from the Padres, who are just kind of kind of treading water. It'll only be a period of time before they drown, per usual, in September.
Okay. George, you got a quick parting shot?
Pat Holberg, Major League umpire Pat Holberg, hasn't worked a game this year. And I'm one of those that follow the umpires, and I'm wondering what the heck's going on. Well, we found out, unfortunately, that he's being investigated by Major League Baseball and their security force. So Pat has asked for a hearing, and I think he did the smart thing to ask for it. Question about betting. Did he bet on Major League Baseball? Did he bet on other sports? We got to get all the information out. I'm not going to cast judgment. I do know this, that Pat Holberg's been in baseball for many, many years, and he's been a good umpire, solid umpire. He's not a crew chief or anything like that. But, Pat, you're going to get your day in court, so to speak, in front of Manfred, and wish you well. But I'm hoping for the best. But if you did bet on games, that's a no-no, and you probably ended your career, my friend.
All right. Bo Crouch is in the chat room. Gave us a nice little shout-out. Very good.
Hey, Bo.
Yeah, we're looking forward to tomorrow night's edition of Inside the Pigskin. Bo is MVP. He's the most valuable performer.
Bo knows football.
Yeah, this guy's unbelievable. So if you know Bo Crouch out there, go out there and follow all of his shows there. Just look for Bo Crouch.
Bo knows.
Football talk with Bo and all that good stuff. So good stuff, Bo. Looking forward to having you on tomorrow night. Mark, parting shot.
My parting shot has absolutely nothing to do with baseball, fellas. Nothing. Book it tomorrow night. The Stanley Cup's over. Florida's going to win this thing.
Okay. Well, you know what?
5 games.
I don't have a parting shot, but I do have a comment. Fair enough. I'm glad as heck that we have Eric Katz back on a couple times a month, maybe as often as he wants, at least twice. Proud of you, Eric, and I think everybody got a good feel for what this guy and how much he really does know. He's so way ahead of his generation and 9 million generations. Glad to have him on there. And second comment, great job, Kate. This is a way to get yourself known out there doing what you're doing, appearing on these shows, and continue to do it. And you're going to find that your following and your reputation is going to gain. So meanwhile, I'm going to put Candy on to close it up. Again, thanks to Jeremy Ballrick, Kate Aitchison, and Ralph Williams and Bo Crouch for making an appearance tonight. Go ahead, Candy.
Tonight's show has been brought to you by the South Florida Tribune Publishing Company, which published Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, which is written by none other than Scott Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, and George Eichhorn wrote the foreword. Get your book on Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Google, or Apple. Audio version will be coming out later this year. Watch for details. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can see writings of Scott and George and my photography. And you can find out transcripts from Dolphins, Lions, Jaguars, a lot of colleges in South Florida. You can also, wherever you get our podcasts, please go listen to us. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football inside the pigskin. Wednesday nights, Sports Exchange, where we talk any sport. Thursday nights is Fire Up. And Scott has a special show on nofilter.net called Motor City Madmouth Show, where he does a one-on-one interviewing. If you'd like to advertise or sponsor a show, call us at 954-304-4941. If you see that red subscribe button, that means you have not subscribed to our channel. And I honestly don't know why, because it's always entertaining. Go hit that red subscribe button, share us, like us, tell all your friends about us. We would love to entertain you. Back to you, Scott.
All right, Candy, well done. And also on Twitter/X, you can follow us at Tribune South. And as Candy would always say, if you weren't able to hear it all, it's over at the bottom as well on the bottom of our ticker. All that information is readily available. So thanks, Kate. Glad that you were here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you more as well. We appreciate the kind words from you. So meanwhile, with that said, this concludes this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. So on behalf of Eric Katz, welcome back, George Eichhorn, Mark the Barber Meriday, and Kate Aitchison, who obviously made her presence felt. We're proud of it. This is Scott Morganroth from Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining on this edition, of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. We'll see you next Monday night. Good night, everybody. Have a great baseball week. Bye now.
Bye-bye.